So I was playing around on the internet trying to find information on ratio, which is a concept that I teach in 5th grade. And I found this really cool website called scaleoftheuniverse.com. It shows you how big and small certain things are inside of the universe. For example, the difference between how big an elephant is in comparison to a giraffe or a Tyrannosaurus Rex. We could go a little bit closer and find out how small things are really. And for example, it shows the difference between a shrew and a hummingbird, or my favorite, a coffee bean versus an ant versus a sunflower seed in comparison to how big a duckweed looks like. We can continue to go closer and you find a dust mite or an amoeba. There's even a bunch of things that I can't even see within here because there's so many comparisons. We have a chloroplast in comparison to a red blood cell, a mitochondria, a clay particle, E. coli, a mimivirus, ultraviolet waves, hepatitis B, transistor gate, philosophophid bilayer. I don't even know what some of this stuff is. Glucose, buckyball, carbon atom. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. Hydrogen atom versus a helium atom, which is interesting because you have these, I think they're electrons that are moving around the atoms, and they're even smaller than things like an ant. We go even closer and you see uranium nucleus and proton, helium, well, just a whole bunch of stuff that I probably can't even pronounce or even understand just because it is so small. Let's go back out and I'll show you some things that are even bigger. You can probably imagine that this just continues on and on and on. We have, going back, a width of a human hair in comparison to a dust mite. So it's pretty much kind of the same. The dust mite looks a little bit bigger. You have the same items that I had before. A matchstick in comparison to a hummingbird, in comparison to a basketball. An inch ruler, sunflower, an oak tree, a dinosaur, the Titanic in comparison to the Eiffel Tower, which I thought was kind of cool. If we go a little bit closer, you can see the difference between how big the Statue of Liberty is compared to the International Space Station in comparison to a football field. You can see a building, I'm not really sure what that is, the Burj Khalifa, probably in some Asian city. Central Park in comparison to the length of an AM radio wave. Then you have Mount Everest. I like how you can compare Mount Everest to the Central Park. Can't really zoom in on some of these things. Sometimes you can see just part of it or the whole thing, but just really small. So kind of see that like this is Central Park in comparison to Mount Everest. It's kind of neat. Rhode Island versus West Virginia, which is actually the same size as Costa Rica. And then California in comparison to Rhode Island. Italy in comparison to California. They actually look pretty similar. Looks like 3 or 4 Italys towards one another. You know, could be the size of Pluto, Texas. We've got a whole bunch of planets, including the planet of Earth. And then the Minecraft world, Uranus, Neptune, and we can just continue going out into the galaxy to some places I've never heard of before. Now we have the distance from Neptune to the Sun. You can see that distance right there. And then you got Stingray Nebula, Gomez Hamburger. I've never heard of any of these things before. The Eagle Nebula, you got some numbers. I don't even know what number that is. Let's see, hundreds, thousands.